Many years have passed since the Fellowship of Light battled the shadow creature at the Grey Havens. Now the heroes find themselves in an unknown land where they discover a man in black is wreaking havoc. Undeath follows him wherever he goes, and long-forgotten legends rise again, having been possessed by his evil. Join the players of this Dungeons & Dragons campaign as they attempt to stop the man in black as he collects artifacts both on and off the Lonely Isle. Welcome to Elostirion in Part 2 of the Inglorion Bastards trilogy, Rise of the Mounds.
Alright, welcome listeners. This will be episode 58, and I'm very happy to start our player interviews with a good friend of mine. He joined us for part 2 of the trilogy, Rise of the Mounds, but he's actually been around for a good while. So MJ, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jared. Glad to be here.
And MJ played a character who, if I were writing this into a novel, I would actually sort of combine all the elven characters like Angolan and Ezellendur, which is MJ's character, into one character, and Ezellendur would be him. This was the elf that lived in Ezellendur, was the fictitious brother of Celebrimbor, and as the party passed through Ezellendur and battled the Watcher at Tharbad, he sort of followed them to the Grey Havens and ended up asking Círdan to hitch a ride on their boat, and in doing so, sort of became friends with the characters. But do you want to tell everybody maybe like the first thing you remember? Because I didn't credit you in the first part of the trilogy, Tol Eressëa. You know, I tried to keep it pretty simple for the listeners who are just getting to know the characters. On the website, I have a list of the characters' names and sort of who played them. What I didn't incorporate into that was all the times that I had other friends, such as yourselves, fill in when somebody couldn't be there. Yeah,
well, that was me. So this was my first experience with D&D, and it was actually a really, really good entry point because it was the lore I really cared about, and it was a really gentle way to get into it because there's a lot going on, and I had no idea what was going on. So there was I came in initially to fill in for.
I think you filled in for Riken, right? Was that right?
Yes,
Woodman.
Yes. Then I ended up taking on, when everyone got their character back, and then the following week, the week's coming, you wrote in some parts for me that I would be able to take on roles as NPC characters.
I remember thinking that that I wasn't very nice to you because the first couple of outside of playing like Riken when Josh couldn't be here, you played like a nerfed Rohirrim rider, right, who didn't do much, and then, but then you ended up playing. I believe you ended up playing the Umbarian Chief Captain Adamir.
Yes, that's right. Yes,
and I think he was shot with a ballista bolt, and knocked off the ship, pretty early into everything, and then Vic took over when the Balrog came out, when the Maiar came out and turned into the Balrog.
That's right.
So I felt pretty bad about that. Like, hey, you can sit in on this campaign; it'll be totally great. And then it was like you didn't get to play much. You do end up in the second arc playing this character named Ezellendur, which means Servant of the Green Mound. I love his name maybe more than any other name.
I remember coming across the story of the second Kinslaying.
Kinslaying, yeah.
I absolutely love that story, and I think the development of this character was largely like a collaboration between your ideas and my ideas, and you know the lore, and I just love the idea of that story, and I thought, it'd be kind of cool to have a person that was involved with that, and I think you even looked it up and you're like, well, Curfin, who was the Noldorian prince, father of Celebrimbor. So in any case, that guy, I can't say it. I'm nervous. Now it's on my mind.
No, it's fine. It's just funny because I literally just edited this video where Josh and I were like, it's Celebrimbor.
He's the one who makes the forges the elvish rings of power, right? So this guy, I thought it'd be great to have this like story that like ties into that, and so we wind up making him to be the brother of that guy, and Sauron goes and winds up attacking Eregion, and ever since then he wants justice done, and so he's going to be fighting Sauron throughout time, and when he enters the story and joins the campaign, it's the most like it's up until that point in time the next battle he's going to fight, the next well,
I think he probably saw the writing on the wall, right? Like at that point in the campaign when the characters were passing through Tharbad, the Shadow Mire that they released from the Void had just sort of gone through the area, and Ezellendur would have been aware of that, and at this point, he was probably like biding his time for revenge, and when this is all sort of started happening, I'm sure he's like, okay, all right, it started now. This is definitely tied. Here's the Shadow Mire who, or knew of, and he's back from the Void. Surely this is leading to something that can't be good. And I think that's kind of why your guys sort of joined with this group. So let's go back a second. I'm curious. We kind of skipped over. You mentioned when I mentioned this campaign, you said this was I think to quote you, this was a world that you cared about. Now, tell me and tell the listeners about your experience with Tolkien and with Lord of the Rings.
So I got this really cool story. So I was in high school when the Lord of the Rings came out, and that was my first experience with Lord of the Rings. I think I may have heard of it before as like an epic fantasy tale and everything else, but like I never. I think the thing's a tome, the book. So
yeah.
It was one of those deals that like I wasn't against reading. It just was, if I was going to take that on, I was going to commit to that, So so then I see the movies, right? The movies come out. I'm sucked in. I am like, this is great. So I wound up in high school, and so I wound up reading The Hobbit, and so I never really get a chance to read Lord of the Rings. Anyways, I'm in college studying history and European history, and particularly 19th century European history, and early 20th century, right? So like up until like World War II, right?
Yeah. So
I'm in this class, and the class is called, and it's like my junior year, right? It's called something like the Great War and or art and culture and the Great War. It's basically like the literary and artistic response to the catastrophe of World War I, right? So we looked at artwork, we looked at books, we looked at memorials and war sites, and in that class there was a list of books. Now I read like A Farewell to Arms and Storm of Steel, and so these like traditional World War I stories. And in that class, I remember the professor saying, or had a list of books that was from this time period, and there was Lord of the Rings, and I'm like, why is Lord of the Rings on that list, right? And so I did my own research, and come to find out that Tolkien was an officer in World War I, right? So now I'm really into it. I'm like, and I'm like, I remember at that moment in that class, I'm like thinking back to like the movies, and I'm like wait a minute, so like I'm trying to bridge like his experience in the war with what I'm seeing in the movies, and like obviously it's like the war is like a catalyst for him and like his stories, and like I don't know how much he denied it later on or like accepted that this was like the framework of his stories. Like I don't know if you know more about that than I do, but I'm sitting there looking at this as more like a person's response to their experience during wartime. And of course when they come out, this is what they're going to be writing about. This is what they're going to be. This is the stories they're going to tell. It's like heroism and brotherhood and lightness and darkness, and like. And even like I don't know, like even like the landscape of Middle Earth is. I mean, you look at something like approaching Mordor and like this like flat like moonscape, right? No trees, no shrubs, just dirt. And I'm like this is like a World War I battleground, It's like so it was crazy for me, like in terms of just like I guess reaching that understanding of like where the time and place of the author rather than this fantasy story as its own separate thing, like the context of which it was written. And so then I wound up trying to read Lord of the Rings, the book, later on, and I don't want to say that I'm probably like offending some listeners at some point, but the movies almost ruined the book for me because I'm reading the book, And I'm like, this isn't the movies, right? Wait a minute, that doesn't make sense.
Well,
right?
so if you are listening and you're offended by this, please send all hate mail to Peter Jackson.
Yeah, exactly, right? But it was awesome because like there's so much lore, there's so much like they're writing off the songs and like you can see that this was like this man's like life work, and that was cool for me. So when you offered me this opportunity, I'm like, yeah, let's dive in, man. I love the movies. Let's go.
I love the movies. Yeah.
And
I'm not sure about the books, but the movies were great.
Right, and of course you based all your lore off the books. I'm like, oh man, but no, it was great because I think the way that the campaign, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but the way the campaign rolls out and the way I can participate inside of it, and the way you explain it, and the way that you, as our guide, it's. You're making ties to the references to the movies and to the books and part of our story, and you're referencing back, and it's great for setting the context for somebody like myself who knows like apparently just like the top level of the lore, but like wanted to know more. And you definitely this campaign made it more accessible, I think.
Well, it was good, I think, that you came in sort of the first part of the campaign and sort of the Middle Earth that we all know, right? Whether it's from it's from the books or the movies, The second part of this campaign starts in sort of a more obscure area in the land of Erisea, right, the Lonely Isle, and even people that have read Lord of the Rings many times and really haven't delved into the Book of Lost Tales or the Silmarillion, it's not the concept of Erisea and the Tower of Avalone, like the Master Palantir, like. That's all foreign to people, I think this is for people that have advanced this far in the podcast are probably pretty diehard Tolkien fans, and so I think even for the players, there needed to be a little bit of hand-holding in those, tons and tons of lore cards. Do you remember those lore cards that I would give you guys?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, it was everything. It was all right. There's a lot there, and. You're right. Your listeners are probably familiar with all these, a lot of these characters and places, but going past the movie. I mean, this is like where like the movies left off, like where like the actual lore of Tolkien comes in. Like this is all the backstory that makes Lord of the Rings make sense.
So I probably talked about this on the podcast before, but the man was a genius, and he believed that he had a few of these stories that he wanted to write. But he also had this mythology that was sort of underlying everything, and he believed that the mythology would make the stories better, and that the stories would make the mythologies better, and that the two would sort of feed off of each other. I think what you learn what we learned from Corey Olsen, the Tolkien professor, and in reading the Book of Lost Tales from Christopher Tolkien, is that these stories evolved over time. Like you were talking about his time in the trenches in World War One. Mm-hmm. His idea, his concepts of all of these things evolved and changed. And what we're playing through in Erisea is sort of an earlier version of his mythology of Britain, and it was just terribly fun to research and to sort of guide people through that land. But we only have a few more minutes left. I want to ask the same question that I ask everybody. Is there, without giving too much away, is there a particular part coming up or that you've experienced so far? So the listeners are essentially. You guys have just escaped from the Tower of Avalone and are heading through the land of elms, about to get to the Cottage of Lost Play. Is there anything, either something that you've experienced or something coming up that they can look forward to?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a lot I remember. There is a fantastic disagreement coming up. I'm thinking about the Pixies. Oh. So yeah, the Pixies were one of my personal favorites. It had nothing. It was it was just me being, I guess, pushing the boundaries of what would be acceptable within the Tolkien lore.
We did a lot of that, pushing the boundaries.
I did. I did. I had fun. So it was fun.
So offline, before we started this interview, MJ was like, "Yeah, if I had known you were going to podcast this, I probably would have watched what I said a little more." So your secret's out, man.
There's some really, really cool surprises coming up where we get to meet some pretty cool people, and including some that maybe are.
As they say in Transformers, more than meets the eye.
Yeah, more than meets the eye. Yeah, that's actually good. I like that reference. Yeah.
Well, if it's all right with you, typically what we do, either right before or right after the last battle of this part of the campaign, we'll have everybody back for like a reunion episode.
Oh, that's cool.
So maybe you could join us for that.
Yeah, I'd love to.
All right, buddy. Well, thanks for stopping by.
All right, no problem. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Though this marks the end of the episode, the road goes ever on. Until next time, join us at longwinded.one and consider giving us a review on Apple Music, Spotify, or really whichever platform you choose.